Hey guys, it's Hink here. So one of the things I get asked about the most is how do I know if I'm a hard gainer and kind of what kind of factors lead to making me a hard gainer, meaning it's harder for you to gain length and girth compared to other people that are doing penile enlargement exercises. So in this video, we're actually going to break down the real scientific factors, none of the bro science BS that you sometimes see elsewhere, but the real factors that can make gaining either easier or harder for you. Before we move forward, guys, just take a second, hit the thumbs up button, maybe consider subscribing. It means the world to me and it costs you nothing. First thing we're going to address is some of the myths, the bro science myths. Guys, there's only 2 layers to the tunica. There have been multiple studies, which I'll put on the screen here, which show that there are 2 distinct layers. There's an outer longitudinal layer, meaning it runs basically like long ways along your penis. And there's also an inner layer that runs in kind of a circular pattern, okay? Also known as a transverse layer. But there are only 2 layers. So if you ever hear somebody talk, well, maybe you're a hard gainer because you have more than 2 layers of tunica. It's bullshit, guys. There's no clinical evidence of that ever existing, okay? So no, that's not true. Categorically inaccurate. Now, where you do have fluctuation is, guys, on the corpus spongiosum, which is the underside of your penis. Now that actually varies, and oftentimes it's 1 layer and it's typically a thin layer. So guys, because the corpus spongiosum only has, sorry guys, if you see my dog's tail in the background, he wanted to join the video, but the corpus spongiosum only has 1 layer and it's often a thinner layer. And so that's why I've hypothesized for years now that a lot of the girth gains actually come from enlargement of the corpus spongiosum. And I also think that some of the length gains come from enlargement of the glands or the head of the penis in the long ways direction, increasing length that way, because those are going to be far easier to increase the size. Because guys, there's different theories out there, but I think there's unequivocal evidence that the rate limiting step when it comes to gains is actually the tunica, because the tunica has to expand and dilate. I've talked about that on all of my different like anti-Lysyl oxidase videos, and even the megalophallus video, as far as like why that is actually the key to gain. Some of the facts are that actually the tunica thickness can vary, but the longitudinal outer layer can actually vary between 0.25 millimeters all the way up to 2 millimeters in thickness. And so in theory, guys, the thinner that layer is, the easier it is going to be to basically dilate and manipulate, where the thicker you're going to have more resistance. So guys, the pros of having a thin tunica is like, yeah, you might be more prone to enlargement, but the con or the downside is that you could actually be at a higher risk of penile fracture. You can also increase the thickness of your tunica doing penile enlargement exercises. And I've talked about that before. See my like collagen stretch video. Now, the other thing that can vary is the actual tunica orientation. And so once again, you have your longitudinal layer, the outer layer that runs basically front to back, if you will, okay? But that inner circular transverse layer, it actually doesn't run in a perfect circle. It runs at obliques. And so depending on the angle of the oblique, it could potentially lead to more or less difficulty with enlargement. So guys, now we're going to start to talk about some of the other factors that could make it more or less easy that don't involve the tunica of the penis. So the first thing is there's something that's called Lysyl oxidase, okay? I've made videos on it before, at least 2 videos about basically anti-Lysyl oxidase, but what Lysyl oxidase is, it's basically responsible for strengthening the collagen bonds within the tunica. And so when they've done rat studies, which I've talked about many a times, and they've injected anti-Lysyl oxidase, just by injecting that, penile growth has been somewhere between 10 to 20%, okay? Even without doing any kind of enlargement exercises. Unequivocally, it works. And I think it's unequivocally proof of concept of how actual penile enlargement works, is a gradual dilation of the tunica over time. That's once again also consistent with the megalophallus data. But guys, you do have genetic variations, meaning you can have different variations of how much anti-Lysyl oxidase or Lysyl oxidase that I have compared to somebody else. So let's talk about those factors. Number 1 is genetics. Some people just have these things called polymorphisms, where you could have polymorphisms that mean you have more or less Lysyl oxidase activity. So just to be extremely clear, guys, the more Lysyl oxidase activity you have, the stronger those bonds are going to be in your tunica, and in theory, the harder it is going to be to gain as a result. So you could have polymorphisms that make you have more Lysyl oxidase activity or less. So guys, I've talked about this before, but there's something that's called TGF-beta, okay? It's a marker, it's a signal for fibrosis amongst other things in the body. But the more activity you have, the more TGF-beta, the more of those Lysyl oxidase signals that you're going to have. And that's why, like I've talked about in my enlargement course, guys, amongst other things, is that if you are pumping at too high a pressure, you're going to increase TGF-beta, you're going to increase that lock signal, in theory, making it harder for you to gain long-term. Same thing if you're doing too long of a pump set time, That's going to also make it difficult because you're going to increase that lysyl oxidase activity. Androgens, a lot of people think that like, oh, let me use DHT cream on my PP to make it bigger. Guys, there's been a study like this one here that shows that actually increased androgen activity has been linked with increased lysyl oxidase activity. So in theory, it could make it more difficult. Now, guys, I've made different videos about like how to biohack your PP, and it does involve a combination of growth hormone and testosterone, but that's in a certain population. I don't think your average person is going to increase your size by using something like DHT cream alone. I made a video about GHKCU, okay? If you haven't seen my video on that peptide, check it out. But guys, copper increases lysyl oxidase activity. Like unequivocally, it does. So you might want to be careful with your consumption of copper, your injection of copper, or anything that's going to increase your systemic copper levels, because the higher your copper, the higher your lysyl oxidase activity. Hypoxia, meaning low amounts of oxygen basically in your bloodstream, are also going to increase lysyl oxidase activity. That's why things like clamping, okay, can signal these markers for fibrosis. Same thing if you're pumping for too long of sets, that's going to trigger low oxygen within your penis because the blood is trapped within there for too long, and it can also send these signals for hypoxia. And even things like being out of shape and having things like diabetes, which can all impact how much blood oxygen is being carried in your circulation, those can all increase lysyl oxidase activity, making it harder for you to gain long term. And guys, the other thing is fibroblast activity. So fibroblast activity is what's responsible for doing things like secreting lysyl oxidase, secreting higher levels of collagen. And guys, I don't care what anybody says. This is my personal opinion, and several smart guys like my guy Simtex also think that if you have too much collagen deposition, that is going to inhibit your penis enlargement gains rather than help, okay? So I don't think we want to be collagen maxing, which is why I don't recommend collagen supplementation. And I am going to make a video about why I think actually collagen is the antithesis to actual penis enlargement. But guys, all of the things I just mentioned about lysyl oxidase activity, they're all basically stimulating fibroblast activity, okay, as well. The one thing that I didn't mention on that other list is actually IGF-1, insulin-related growth factor 1. Now, what that does is it can actually stimulate fibroblast activity. And so a lot of you guys saying, you know, I'm going to try to make my PP bigger, I'm going to use growth factor, you could actually be inhibiting your gains. Now, if you're using it to recover from an injury, that's one thing. But if truly you're just using it for enlargement purposes, I don't recommend it. Guys, I made a whole video about IGF-1, okay, and growth hormone and the benefits and potential cons of using it. So please check that out as well. Guys, I think the biggest limiter of basically hard gainers is actually twofold. Number one is either user error, okay? You haven't seen enough of my videos. You haven't seen my pumping playlist. You haven't bought my course, okay? Or, you know, you haven't seen the Hink trial, which I proved that, you know, on average, people gained about a 1/2 inch in length and a 1/4 inch in girth with photos that you can see for yourself. But the point is that they're not using the appropriate stimulus, okay? You know, I give a lot of grief to some people that are like, oh, okay, if you're doing PE, you know, you need to calculate, you know, what is your expansion rate and, you know, how much length have you expanded, and you have to divide by this. But like a lot of that I actually agree with, in the sense that there is a tangible goal that you can have to know whether or not that you're like reaching appropriate stimulus to grow. These guys that are out here using bath mates, slamming this thing into their D, potentially causing injury, not having any concept of what they're pumping with, these are the guys that are hard gainers because they don't know what pressure they're using. They oftentimes don't monitor their set time, and it can just lead to a lot of issues that way. And so you need to actually know what you're doing, guys. And so one is going to be basically user error. You use a pump that doesn't have a gauge, you know, etc. Okay. If you are looking for pumps and equipment, peakmalephysique.com, guys. The other thing is that some of you guys are just giant pussies. You don't have what it takes to stay dedicated and to actually put in the time. You use an extender, you try doing manual stretches for a few weeks, you don't see any gains, and then you give up. On my Hink trial, there were a lot of pussies, okay? 80% of the guys actually just stopped doing it. Several of them just ghosted me. Then there was a few guys that actually stuck through it, and of those few guys, a couple of them, you know, didn't necessarily mean to break protocol, but I couldn't use their data because they were doing activities, but it wasn't consistent with the protocol. And so, you know, those guys obviously aren't in that category. But a lot of you guys just don't have the heart, the will, the dedication to actually stick with it for 3 months, 6 months to actually to the point where you can see gains. So guys, do you want me to make a part 2 video about, like, if you are a hard gainer, these are the things that you can do to offset some of these challenges you might potentially have? If you want me to make that video, please let me know in the comments down below. If there's enough interest, I'll make that video. But guys, what do you think? Is what I'm saying making sense? What is your experience? Are you a hard gainer, or are you somebody that's grown more easily? If you are interested in me for coaching, I do it through my Patreon, patreon.com/Hink. If you need to reach me for injury coaching or enlargement coaching, all the links to everything you need from me are in the description. Remember guys, there's nothing wrong with self-improvement, but you are enough just as you are. All right guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and love.
Dr. Hink got the plug on the health, yeah. Got you thinking about your wealth, yeah. In his office, no stealth, yeah. Pinnacle of that below the belt, yeah. Checks and balance, he's managing. Working miracles, no damage. Got you covered, no panicking. Steady calm. In the clinic, no vanishing. Yeah, with Doc Hink, it's the way back.